I'm like engaged in other things, but alrighty. All right. Well, let's go through a couple prayer requests. If you could, obviously be praying for our missionaries that we saw last week, the Walker family. They've got just a few months that they'll be stateside. I think they're heading back to New Zealand in November. So pretty quick turnaround. And I know that some of you maybe recognize this, some of you may not be as readily, something you're aware of. But when you come from New Zealand to America, it really is a culture shock. There's a lot of different terms. I mean, I want to say in every conversation I have with Dalton Walker, there's several terms that he is using wrong, or differently, I shouldn't say wrong. And a lot of things that you're trying to get used to in the States, and then you turn back around and go back to New Zealand. But really, a lot of that is born out of necessity. Think about it. Dalton's pastoring a church there, and he's been gone for a couple months. It's real, and it's a younger church plant. You got to really only be away a little bit. And he told me that ideally they would be they really need to raise more support. They're behind because of the inflation. And so we want to pray for a church that God will bless this short trip financially, because they're behind financially because of lack of support financially. So be praying for them. And I believe they're in Seminole, Oklahoma this morning, ministering to a church there. How many of y'all enjoyed having the Walkers in last week? How many of y'all enjoyed that? Good. Hopefully you did. And those are rare opportunities. I'm hoping, Lord willing, still working out the details, but hoping to have Dallas Brown missionary to Burkina Faso. And I've never met him in person, but having talked to him on Zoom and then a couple times via email and reading his prayer letters, I really think that he's a wonderful ministry that we've gotten behind as a church, and I'm excited for us to get reacquainted with him. I would imagine it was over 5 years ago that he was here, maybe 7 years ago, and so I would imagine a good deal of you don't know Dallas and his family, and so still working out when the timing of that would be to have him in, but looking forward to fellowshipping with some of our supported missionaries. And then, so be praying for the Walker family, and then be praying this morning. How many of you were part of the church maybe 4-ish years ago? How many of you were part of the church? I wasn't, but how many of you have been part of the church 4 years or more? Okay? So some of you would remember that the missions conference you had prior to me coming, you had a missionary that was planning a church in Boulder, Colorado. His name is Mark Martinez. Do you remember him? I know some of you remember. Mark and I are actually been connected since school, and we did a pastor's retreat together this year. And I want you to be praying for Mark's ministry. Number one, I'd love if we had missions budget to do it, and we'll talk a little bit about our missions budget tonight. I'd love for us to get behind him financially. I got to hear the type of people Mark's reaching are people who used to be Buddhist, Hinduist, all sorts of stuff. In Boulder, Colorado, they call it the San Francisco of the Midwest. It's a very, very eclectic city with very foreign views about God, very much a Mars Hill type place. But I was texting Mark this morning because he shared a story of a lady who's been attending their church almost since the opening of it. She comes every single service and is an agnostic. She's never converted to Christianity yet. And Mark's like, man, she's just so close. And then I texted him this morning and said, hey, I'm praying for that lady in your church. And he said, well, actually, Pastor, we've got several more in our church. We've been running about 41 lately, which, by the way, for a Baptist church in Boulder, that's bananas to have that many people. And he says there's several people in our services every Sunday who are not Christians, who are coming because they're interested in learning about Christ and being drawn to him. So I want us to pray this morning, especially for Mark Martinez and his church, Boulder Valley Baptist Church. So let's pray for them, okay? And then also be praying for one of our members, Robbie and Doris Goodnight. I visited them this week a little bit. And of course, Doris has some ongoing health issues that we could be praying for all the time. But Robbie's got some remaining heart issues. And so they're going to have him do a more intensive therapy for his heart. Hopefully in the next few weeks, they'll start that. So be praying for them. I know it's easy for folks like that to be out of sight, out of mind, because their health can make it a little difficult to get here as much as they'd like to be here, as much as they've normally attended church in their own life. But be praying for the Goodnight family if you could.